Well, this is Suzaan and Chris. We make wine. We make white wine from South Africa. The principal building block behind what we're trying to do is that we're trying to make authentically Cape wine that can't be imitated in other parts of the world. That's the reason we focus on Cape varieties. Chenin and Semillon, there's evidence that they've been planted in the Cape since 1656. So that means they've been here for about 80 years longer than there's any written evidence of Cab being planted in the Medoc, for instance, before it migrated south from the Loire. So they really are South African varieties. So in trying to get to that point of seeing what the Cape can do, we're working with old bush vines that are planted on normally pretty remarkable sites. We're trying to stay above 300 meters in altitude, and we're cherry picking sites from across the Cape. So some of them are very far away. They need to be high altitude. They need to be dry land. They need to be as sustainably farmed as possible. And they need to be old. I mean, everything, there's old and there's old. You know, our oldest stuff is 77 years old this year, and we've got one new young block that's actually only 14 years old. So that's not very old. But the majority of the stuff is in its late 30s. Some of it's in its 40s. So it's about age, but it's not just about age. It's about site. So we think we've got some remarkable sites. And what we're trying to do is we make a wine called Cartology. There's this one over here. This is sort of our village wine. This is our Western Cape white wine. We're trying to see what the Cape can do in a given vintage through the lens of its bush vine, so to speak. And then what we want to do is start expanding on that idea with zooming in on origin. We really want to see how old the traditional Cape varieties like Chenin can be used as vehicles for terroir and for showing origin. So we're going to start releasing single vineyard old bush vine Chenins to complement Cartology, and just to grow a small portfolio of single cru wines. Whether they're Premier Cru or Grand Cru is for the consumer to decide, I suppose. Some of them require a lot of input, like Radio Lazarus, our first single vineyard release, requires an enormous amount of agricultural financial input, so it ends up being expensive. But I think the wine's worthwhile, and it certainly, gets us to a point where we can see what we can really do in the Cape if we play to our strengths, and if we start to use the things that are right under our noses. There've been a lot of revivals in different parts of the world, like Santorini and Priorat and these places where they start to you better get that, it must be important.
No, it's important.
Where they start to sort of, it's only my mum. She's made it onto the video clip. Where they start to look at what they've got, really delving deep into old vine Aseptico and old vine Grenache and things like that, and celebrating that rather than trying to conform to what's happening in Burgundy or what's happening in Bordeaux and think those are the only places where great wine is made in the world. It's kind of like native wines or wines that are specific or unique to a place, like Mount Etna and these places. And I think the Cape has got a measure of that, and we'd like to be the people that are starting to explore that really fully. That's what we're doing.
So if you're aiming for terroir expression, do you have to take a particular approach in your winemaking?
Yeah, we're trying to take winemaking out of it as much as we can, actually. We just we whole batch press everything. We settle it quite roughly, and then we just let it ferment. We let it do what it wants to do, and then we track it through the process, and then we normally sulfur it for the first time in about August. So all the plots are fermented or are treated exactly the same. They're fermented in old oak barrels. There's nothing added at all. We just don't put anything in it. We just don't think you have to. It's something we saw in the Mosel with the guy that we worked with there. He just didn't touch the stuff, and eventually at the right time it got a bit of sulfur, and it works really well. It's not because we're hippies or because we dance around at the full moon in our underpants to make better wine. It's just that
it's a bad thought, isn't it? It's a really bad thought.
Actually look quite good in my underpants. Anyway, the point is it makes better wine. And you can go back to farming as well. You need to farm as close to the land as you can. You need to build up a healthy soil. You need to have a lot of soil flora happening. But we don't follow biodynamic agriculture, and we're not certified organic. We use a lot of principles. We try to farm with our minds as well as our hearts. And the winemaking needs to be completely non-interventionist in our opinion. But we do use sulfur, so we're not natural winemakers. Come in. Yeah, active note from the Semillon here, but this is just, and this is also it's quite a large wine. It's not slim and tiny.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was really good.
He's a good guy. He's got good plans for distribution in South Africa. Probably got a good speaker. Difficult to tell. Really, really interesting ones. So in the first 2 years, basically our barrels, we only had, we bought 18 barrels for the 11, and because we were buying 2 or 3 rows from an old block, and now because the demand is, we haven't made anywhere near enough wine in 2012 for the requests we're getting. We basically decided instead of buying half of a vineyard, we're just buying the whole block. So it's exactly the same vineyards that we've always worked with. There's no changes there, except for one in Riviere, which is a new addition, and there's one